Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Business Breakthroughs. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel. I'm here with Michael Millay and Andrew Hunnitzfeld. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great. It's a beautiful day.
Yes, and we're talking about, it's so beautiful. In fact, we're talking about how much time we waste and not even knowing it. I think this is important because when you guys get into the work that you do, a lot of it is, the show is called Business Breakthroughs. And one of the biggest breakdowns people have is with their time, right? Their time, and they're wasting time and they don't even know it. So I'm super curious to dive into what you guys see when clients come to you. What are their hurdles? Like, where do you see this time wasting and how do you fix it for them?
Well, I think the time wasting it's actually rather prevalent. And for us, it's really as simple as like, where are you doing things in your business that you don't have to do? You know, anytime you're doing something that somebody else could be doing, you're wasting time because you could be spending your time working either more on the business or getting more clients or doing anything that is more your cup of tea than, everybody has to send in, you have to mail things from time to time. Going to the mailbox yourself is a waste of your time as a business owner. That's just one example. So it's really anywhere that you're doing something that is not quite up to the caliber of who you are as a business owner.
I think for, when you think about producers, people that are super successful, I know that's who you guys really work with. I think sometimes we know that, we know that my time is not as well spent going to the mailbox. And yet, right? And yet I think the part about in this title, we don't even know we're wasting time, we're wasting time, we don't know it, is that I get that from an intellectual level, but I'm not auditing my life.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I actually don't even know where I'm going to the metaphorical mailbox in my life.
Exactly.
How do you guys help clients determine those time sucks or those metaphorical mailboxes?
So one of my favorite examples of this is we had someone that we were working with who literally would do some basic 5-minute task. It was just like doing a little tiny bit of research on a client or a property or something like that. And we would ask him, okay, well, why don't you have this person who's working for you do it? And his response was, well, that would take 15 to 20 minutes to train them to do that. So it's just faster if I do it myself. And we're like, okay, but how many properties do you look up throughout a year? And he started counting in his head and he's like, probably 100 to 300. I'm like, okay, so would you rather spend 20 minutes training them so they could do the other 300? Or do you think spending 5 minutes doing 300 each time would be better? He's like, I'm going to train him today.
Yeah. What's behind that, do you think? Is that about I don't trust people? Is it that I'm just so task-oriented and fast-paced that I can't slow down? What is that about?
It's a combination of things. Yeah. One being, yes, I don't trust people to do it to the same level that I do.
Yep.
Which is a very common thing that most entrepreneurs have, which is why usually they're entrepreneurs in the first place, is because there's level of lack of trust inside of other people's leadership and or lack of acknowledgement for themselves by leaders in their lives. Yeah. And so what they end up doing is going out on their own and then being those same exact type of leaders because they don't realize what the cause of it is.
Yeah.
And it's it's not their fault at all. It's just they're doing what they're doing.
Yep.
And there's actually nothing wrong with being that way. It's just not effective for what their goal is.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's the trust element, but then there's also the not being aware and not actually, it goes back to what Andrew said about working on your business versus working in your business. Whereas how people orient themselves is point A to point B. Not, okay, we're about to run a huge marathon for the next 10 years. How are we going to sustain ourselves over a 10-year period?
Right.
What structures need to be in place? How do we need to plan it out? What support do I need?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I need people to meet me to resupply or whatever it is?
Yep.
Yeah. I think there's one other element too, is I don't really know how to call it, as like a lack of or whatever, but I think that people are scared that if they're not the only ones, if they're not the ones producing in their business, right? So if they give off some part, somehow they're less valuable to the business. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs also start businesses because they want to be valuable, whether it's in their eyes or in somebody else's eyes. So the idea of giving some of that value away is often sort of an underlying thing that you don't even know is going on for you.
Yeah.
And there's actually even a deeper mindset thing around that. Around most entrepreneurs have something along the lines of, if I'm not working hard for the money I make, then clearly I didn't earn it.
Right. Exactly.
Which will cripple you and burn you out.
It's referencing the last episode. It's a should. It's a business should. Mm-hmm. You know, it's owning your own business should be a lot of work. I don't know who said that or why they said it, but that's just mean and wrong. So like, you know, it shouldn't be anyway. Yeah. You know, sometimes it is hard work and sometimes it's not, and that's actually okay too. So
I feel like there's a sense of, there's also this sense of control. Like as an entrepreneur, when I do things, I'm controlling it, and that it feels safe to me. It feels comfortable to me. And the minute I give it to somebody else, I'm not controlling that, then that feels risky to me. And I think sometimes that's also one of those deeper embedded mindsets that we don't really think about, but it lives there, you know?
Yeah, Chris,
definitely.
Could we actually like just dive into that with you right now on on this show? Like, I'm more than willing to give you like a breakthrough inside of that. And
nice.
Because I see actually an opportunity, because it really does go back to that trust issue of like, especially if that's something that you have a fear around. What's at the heart of that fear is so many times probably in your past, you've asked people to do things and they haven't fulfilled on it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, is that accurate?
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of that though comes down to a management style that has been ineffective over time. And not necessarily like, I'm not like criticizing you inside of it. I'm just saying it's just a mismatch between what your commitment is and what your goal is, and how you're operating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the breakdown that stems from a lot is actually precise use of language around the requests you make and the feedback that you give. And most people view feedback as criticism and like, oh, I'm being negative, or they swing the other direction of, oh, people need to always know what they're doing wrong so they can get better. And it's when people get into that binary either or, it needs to be one way or the other, that they get caught up. Because there's times where it's like, okay, cool, yes, that person didn't do what I needed them to. And then there's also times where it's like, okay, well, I asked them for coffee, not my specific type of coffee.
Right.
And so usually what happens is people always assume they're communicating at a great level because they know exactly what they mean. Right. And when you are actually looking at how you communicate, and it's actually crazy if you even record a meeting for yourself and go back and listen to it and hear the types of questions you're asking and the requests you're making, particularly the requests you're making and how you're making the requests, you'll find that that's where the breakdowns are occurring.
Yeah.
Because if you need something in a certain time frame and you don't give that time frame, then how is the person supposed to know what you mean by soon? Is soon within the next week? Is it within the next month? Is it 5 minutes from now? Like,
even if you say today, by the way, I need this today. By what time today? Because if I get it to you at midnight tonight, in my eyes, that's still today. But in your eyes, that might not be. So it's, you know, just, it's the specifics that he's talking about.
Let me ask this too, because I feel like sometimes, I think sometimes I know exactly what I want, and then sometimes I actually don't. I don't know what to ask for, and so then I just don't ask, right? And that's when I'll end up taking it on myself, because I don't know how to tell you what I want, right?
Right.
Or I hear how vague it sounds in my head, and I'm like, I don't even know how to tell you this, right?
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because what you're actually pointing to is that you're managing from a place of personalities, not accountabilities.
Right.
Tell me more.
Because you have particular people in your business who you rely on as people.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize inside of a business that when breakdowns occur, it doesn't occur at oh, this person sucks, or this person sucks, or I did it badly. It actually occurs at the structural level inside of your business of like, what structures do you have in place in your business that allowed that breakdown to happen? What structures are missing inside of your business that actually supports having those structures? And so inside of that, it's like, if you have someone who's actually accountable for marketing, let's just say,
Yep.
and you have a vague marketing idea, if they're actually accountable, you could go, hey, I have this idea. Can you figure out some ways that it can work?
Yeah.
But if you don't have the right person in place,
Yeah.
and that's okay, we're going to go on a little tangent.
I was going to say, actually, this is right here. One of the things about the control aspect is you actually have all of the control in who you give it off to just by who you hire.
Yep.
So, you know, a good hire is going to be a good hire, not just in like the person's a good hire, but in you set it up for the accountabilities that Michael was just talking about for all of that. That's actually what's going to make the difference, because if you have the right person who's responsible for marketing and you have that marketing idea, I'm just running on that train as well, and you have the marketing idea, you can actually turn to them. And even if it's just a 5-minute co-collaboration of like, hey, I know I want to do something with this. I'm not quite sure what that looks like. Do you have any ideas? Do you want to go back and forth? And if they're really the right person, they'll be like, oh, I think I see what you're saying. Let me get you 3 ideas back. When do you need it by? And then you say, oh, end of day today, 5 o'clock, whatever, you know, be specific.
Yeah.
But if you're really working with them, they're partners as much as they are teammates, as much as they are employees. Like they really can be there for you in your business, because everybody that's in that business is there because they're excited about what they get to do.
Also, you've set them up with the training and the pre-work, which is why when we talk about hiring, we're not just talking about, oh, you interviewed this person and they're a good fit, quote unquote. But hiring is actually like a 4 or 5 step process.
Yeah.
And most people view it as like a 2-step process.
Meet a person, hire a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually another point that I want to bring in, which is when people have a breakdown or an upset, there's actually only 3 things that you can ever be responsible for if you're feeling disempowered inside of a situation. And this is what I always go to whenever like I have a breakdown in my life or even in the business or anything. And the 3 things that I can always look to be responsible for, to see my part in it, to see what I could have done differently, is, first of all, in the situation, how did I respond to it?
Right.
Did someone come and say, oh, this is going this way, and I yell at them, let's say? I don't really yell, but let's just pretend for a second.
Yeah.
He yells.
If I yell at them and then they get upset, like, and the conversation goes poorly, like, okay, I can kind of figure out what went wrong.
Yeah, right.
If, let's say someone misses a deadline, or misses the deadline I have was the deadline, to be more accurate. What I might see is, oh, I didn't make a good request of them, or, oh, I didn't set them up for it, or, oh, my plans changed and I didn't let that person know. So it's essentially how you set up the expectations for people going into a situation,
Right.
Yeah.
whether they're spoken or unspoken. And then the third thing is actually choosing to be around that person.
Right.
And like, that means choosing that hire. Like if you're having a problem employee that you're mismanaging, but you've done everything you can to set them up, then the structural breakdown inside of your business is that you hired the wrong person.
Right.
And that's okay. It just, you then know you hired the wrong person, and you probably shouldn't hire that same person again for that position, even if you think in your mind it's the right fit for what you want.
Right. There's actually two things on that. One is in the second breakdown when he talked about not communicating. One of the things is if you know you need something by 5 and it's like deadline critical, you need it by 5. That doesn't mean communicate first thing in the morning that you need it by 5 and then at 4:50 sit around and go, God, I hope it shows up in the next 10 minutes. And it's part of the control aspect, and to a certain way it's like getting your control back, if you will. But like, you know, following up with people at like noon, like, hey, are we still on track for 5? Is there anything you need? That's it. It's not a micromanagement. It's not a, did you do this yet? It's just checking in with people because you know that 5 is a real deadline.
I think I'm loving this conversation, by the way. And here's my devil's advocate to that. I'm a busy, successful person. Yep. I asked you at 9 a.m. to do it. And my expectation is like, you're going to do it. Right. And then I get to 4:55 and you haven't done it. And I'm like, dude, like I asked you, you said yes. You didn't do it. Like, is that not
then you hired the wrong person?
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is, I mean, literally like a 30-second check-in as you're walking by them, because at some point you will take a lunch break. At some point you will go outside. And look, I'm talking, and when I say to do that, I mean, if it's like mission critical, like this has to go out by 5, that's when you have a good hire so you can count on them. And you're just making sure that nothing has gotten in the way of that request.
Yep. So
that they're clear that you are like, this is numero uno, the you know, El Jefe of requests. Like this is as big as it gets. That's more what I'm talking about. For the most part, if you say by 5, you know, if you have a good hire, you don't have to worry about it.
I do think both of those are at play though. I do think one, it could be the wrong hire, but I also agree. I think it could be one of those things where I as the producer am learning to inspect what I expect, like checking in with the process of things. I think too many people don't have success in leverage because they say it once and then they don't check in. There is a learning process for your team to like, you've got to cultivate your team. You can't just be like, hey, here it is. And then like, you know, everything's perfect. Like there's a lot of checking in, I think.
Well, and that's why when we were talking about requests and feedback, because part of it is people aren't going to do it perfectly the first time.
Yeah. Right.
And you just have to know that. Like, think about the first time you tried riding a bicycle, let's say.
Right.
Were you perfect at it?
Right. No.
Okay.
Right.
And so anytime there's a new task, you need to make sure that you actually properly train them, not just to do it, but to do it the way and to the quality you want it done.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the piece that most people miss, and why they then feel like they can't trust people, because someone says, yes, I know how to do this, which they do in the manner and capacity that they have.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not up to your standards or doesn't fit what you want. Also, the other part is that most people when they're communicating are very selfish inside of, they want to communicate the way they want to communicate. Period. They don't want to have to think about how they communicate to other people. Like they might flex a little bit with a client just to make it work. But what most people don't realize is that same flexibility inside of communication also shows up in your business and can make your business 10 times more effective if you just take the 10 seconds before a conversation to take a deep breath and think about, okay, well, for this person, I need to communicate this way. And then what would normally be an hour conversation turns into 5 minutes. And then they're shocked that it's 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, and people often they often resist the idea of putting in 5 minutes now to save yourself an hour later. Why? Because they're hoping they don't have to do the hour later. So they're like, if all goes well, I won't have to do it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you put in the 5 minutes now, you won't have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's often one of the things, and Michael, I like the way you say it better, but it's essentially like slowing down to speed up. You know,
I think that is so good, because that's the hard part for producers. Producers are so fast paced most of the time that to slow down not only feels painful to me, like physically, I'm like, I can barely stand myself. So I'm fidgeting so much to slow down like this, but it also, I see dollar signs like evaporating. I'm like, oh my God, I should be out there doing stuff. Or like, there's all this stuff that happens. And this is reminding me of the E-Myth Revisited.
Right. Exactly.
Where like the technician has an entrepreneurial seizure, starts their own business, goes out and produces a ton, and then holds it all because they're technically good at what they do, but they have to learn a new skill, a new muscle to flex, called how do I get results through others rather than producing the result myself.
Those are our people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Those are our people.
Yes, it's totally your people. And that's what you guys, this is what I love, because what you guys do in your business, I think people underestimate their need for help. Right? Yes. All these producing technicians underestimate, like you said, like they think the hiring process is a two-step thing, when in reality, there's so much more in the background of communication, the process, and all that, you know?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Actually, when I read the E-Myth, that was one of the first times where I was like, oh, this business that we have, this is a great idea. You know, I liked it. I definitely, you know, Michael and I were going back and forth. We were talking about it. We loved the idea of what we were producing. And then reading books like the E-Myth, I was like, oh, this is like a thing. This isn't just like I noticed this once or twice. They wrote a whole book about how what we noticed is a thing for these technicians. And yeah, you know, I think that a lot of people, even people who don't even consider themselves technicians, they really struggle with the idea of how to be a producer and how to get my team to produce. And that and what it takes, you know, it's like, again, going back to slowing down to speed up, is like you spend 5 minutes to make sure that your teammate has what they need. Now, both of you are working at top speed for the whole day. You're essentially doubling your time in a day. That's the most ideal situation you have.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting that you bring up the E-Myth, because like that and the 4-Hour Workweek, how many people do you know who have read those books?
Yeah, ton.
How many of them have actually implemented?
Hardly any.
Right.
And that's because in those books, they give a general framework of some of the mindset stuff and how to implement a few of the things inside of that. But because it's such a general thing, because it's made for mass consumption, it doesn't actually help someone like you or like in any of the people that we work with. Like they can get it at a intellectual, conceptual level of, oh, this might be possible, but how do they actually get there?
Right.
And that's kind of what we go to work on is there's a bunch of baby steps that they have to do to build those structures into their business and really their life. And some of that requires a different mindset for them to actually get behind that structure and actually hold that structure and that standard. And some of it requires them just actually taking an action and putting in a structure, putting in a standard operating procedure, and then actually being willing to be held to that standard operating procedure, which most entrepreneurs will be like, but it's my business, so I can be the exception to the rule. And it's like, well, no.
Yeah.
It reminds
and
me,
also,
go ahead, Andrew.
There's also something about like, when they talk about like when the E-Myth talks about the technician who, you know, decided to become an entrepreneur, right? Most people, like sometimes I'll say it like this, sometimes the breakthrough that people need to have is that they are in fact the technician. Because they think, oh God, yeah, I know people that do that. Totally. It's you, buddy. And they're like, no, like my friend Jim. He's the guy. And it's like, no, you are doing this right now. And so like when you read the book, you can't fully implement it unless you actually get that you are the technician, or, you know, if you're the 4-Hour Workweek, that you're the guy who's in the way of your 3 months traveling to Europe. You have to take that and you have to get that. And like, that's what's, oftentimes that's one of the first things we have to go to work on is informing people that they are that way and that it's not something that you just read about in a book. It's written for a reason.
Yeah. I feel like you guys are the image that's coming to my mind is like a personal trainer for businesses, right? Like there is this element where when you're wanting to get fit, you have to go learn how to do the lifts properly. Like you could watch a YouTube video and you could sort of like try to pump some iron, but when you really want to get committed to the result, like and I know this because like I worked out for 6 years and like produced whatever results I produced on my own. And then I hired a trainer, and in 12 weeks, not 6 years, I had more results because of the coaching that was coming through, right? Like the nuances. And this is what is so cool about what you guys do, because there's an opportunity to not only have the mindset shift, to be exposed to the things I can't see myself as the technician, but there's also the process. You guys kind of double whammy this thing with mindset and process, because that's what is needed to produce the result of having your life back.
Yeah. And that's actually a big portion to why we decided to do our coaching daily instead of once a week is, like you said, when you're working out personal training, right?
Yep.
It's the little things that the personal trainer works on that has your technique work.
Yep.
So they're all these little tweaks that happen every time you come in that are going to produce those results. And so for us, we figured we can give you those tweaks once a week. And then, it might take 3 to 5 weeks to get something, right? And then that means you're 3 to 5 weeks out versus if we're doing this every day, within the first week, you've had those tweaks. They're already in and they're set.
Yeah.
And so that's what we really work on. And it is that personal training aspect is really one of the best ways I've heard us describe to us, which is great, because that's what we really are. It's the process, it's the mindset, and it's both together. Yeah. And that's what makes it so effective.
Well, let's wrap like this, guys. I mean, this is, I love the idea that, I love the idea that we're wasting time and don't even know it. I actually don't love the idea that we're wasting time, but I love that there is, I love that we've pinpointed that we're wasting time and don't know it, because I think that's the beginning of changing it. For all of you listening to this that are out there being like, I don't have enough time in the day. The reality is you probably do, but you're being a technician and you're holding on to too many things. And what you need is a personal trainer to help you see the mindset of it and the process of it, and then get you through those nuances so you can get your life back. Guys, if people want to connect with you and start to explore how to get more time back in their life, where can they go? How can they connect with you?
Right now, our website is still the way to do it. It is MilleandHonigtsveld.com, and it's MILLEAANDHON as in Nancy, I, G as in Gus, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, ELD as in dog.com.
We should get like a vanity domain that's like getyourtimeback.com or something. And we'll be like,
we're going to get something a little easier because I don't even want to spell that all out all the time. So
you guys have such beautiful, fancy names. I love it.
I was so intimidated the first time I went to go spell his last name. And then he like showed it to me and I'm like, oh, so it's perfectly phonetic.
Yeah.
Huh.
Unlike yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine's just Miller, but said very French.
Oh, nice. Miller, but with an A instead of an R. Miller. I love it. The Malay high life. All right, guys. Well, listen, this is a great episode. I'm looking forward to our next one. Thanks for your time and your wisdom, and we'll catch you then. See ya.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.